people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of this weekend's fight, Eddie Hearn feels the first knockdown of Pacheco's career could entice other potential opponents. Diego Pacheco's promoter believes the vulnerability of the undefeated super middleweight showed this past Saturday might actually help his cause. Now that Pacheco suffered his first knockdown as an amateur or pro, Eddie Hearn wouldn't be surprised if apprehensive potential opponents change their minds about fighting him.
Yeah, of course, now that he looks more beatable.
Los Angeles' Pacheco has developed into one of the top fighters in the super middleweight division, yet Hearn has had trouble finding highly rated super middleweights willing to face him. Kevin Lele Sajo was unbeaten before he opposed Pacheco at Adventist Health Arena in Stockton, California. The Cameroonian contender hadn't fought anyone nearly as good as the taller, hard-punching Pacheco, but his own power made matters interesting.
Another testament to just because you're not familiar with a guy and you've never seen a guy doesn't mean that guy isn't any good. I think the American boxing fans were largely ignorant to Kevin Lele Sajo before Saturday, but now they know what he can do, they know who he is.
Sajo's left hook dropped Pacheco about 45 seconds into the 8th round. Pacheco recovered, regained control of the bout, and won the 12-rounder comfortably on two judges' scorecards, 117-110, 116-111, and 115-112. I was saying to the guys, Hearn told DAZN's Chris Mannix, sometimes you get dropped. Those guys, all of a sudden, that might not have taken the fight before, might decide they want to take the fight now. Hamza Sheeraz, particularly Jaime Munguia. Pacheco, 25-0 with 18 KOs, and Hearn both said that Mexico's Munguia is their preferred opponent for Pacheco's first fight of next year. Turkey LL Sheikh, chairman of Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority and owner of the ring, has expressed an interest in matching Pacheco against England's Sheeraz on Riyadh season in February. Whichever opponent Pacheco encounters next, Hearn acknowledged he'll need to be better than he was in defeating Sajo. Matchroom Boxing's chairman also believes the ring's 5th-ranked super middleweight will apply what he learned during his third 12-rounder unanimous decision win of this year against top opponents in his division. You know what? So many boxes ticked Saturday night, Hearn said, regarding Pacheco's performance. He's 24 years old. Nobody wants to fight Kevin Sajo. He's a nightmare. You saw that. He got dropped, comes back, nearly stopped Sajo at the back end of the fight. He'll learn so much from that. I think he can be better. I think he knows that. But sometimes you've got to have nights at the office like that where you come through the other side. And a lesser fighter, a lesser man, with lesser heart, lesser ability, would have got beat tonight. But at 24 years of age, I think this guy solidified himself as one of the future stars of the super middleweight division. He's right. He needs that big fight now because he's ticked all the boxes. You know Steven Nelson, Trevor McCumbee, Kevin Sajo. Where else do you go?
I'm not ready to throw the whole fighter away after Saturday's performance. I understand that Diego didn't look his best and he got floored in the 8th. But I always come back to that Abdullah Mason fight, where he got floored 2 times in the same round by a journeyman, by a gatekeeper. He still went on to become WBO lightweight champion. So, who's to say the same won't apply to Diego Pacheco? So I'm not ready to throw the whole fighter away. And what portion of what we saw on Saturday isn't just that Kevin is a good fighter, that Kevin is a tough out?
It doesn't all have to be that Diego's crap, that Diego sucks. I mean, some bit of it has to be that Kevin Lele Sajo is a good fighter. He's relentless with a good engine, good power, and he makes for a hard night at the office. That's what Diego had.
So now Diego is interested in Jaime Munguia, and Eddie Hearn says it can fill a stadium in LA. Diego Pacheco would definitely consider facing Hamza Sheeraz, who is also in the running for a fight with him. Pacheco told The Ring, before he beat Sergio on Saturday, that he'd even entertain the idea of boxing the unbeaten Brit in his home country of England. Turki El Sheikh, chairman of Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority and owner of The Ring, is interested in bringing a Sheeraz-Pacheco fight to his country's capital city as part of a Riyadh season event planned for February. I like the both of those fights for Diego next. It is time to step it up. Either Jaime Munguia or Hamza Sheeraz, I would not complain about either. But a fight with Hamza Sheeraz would require a quick turnaround for Pacheco, who just went 12 with Sergio. Pacheco would prefer to face Mexican super middleweight contender Jaime Munguia in Pacheco's hometown of LA. You know, I think that fight interests me the most right now is the Jaime Munguia fight. Pacheco told DAZN's Chris Mannix in The Ring following his unanimous decision win over Sergio. You know he's a great fighter, a great Mexican warrior, and you know I feel that's the fight I'm missing right now to really get to stardom. I could see how that would help Diego's profile. Fighting a well-known Mexican fighter, albeit a very flawed Mexican fighter still.
They know him.
People know Jaime.
In addition to Pacheco's roots there, the Los Angeles area is home to millions of people of Mexican descent. Tijuana's Munguia is a popular fighter among Mexicans and would make good business sense as Pacheco's next opponent. Back home in LA, I know all the fans would love that fight in LA, Pacheco said. And you know, it's all up to my team, Eddie Hearn, and my promotion to make it happen. Hearn has had preliminary discussions with representatives for Munguia.
Making the Munguia fight might be a little bit more difficult than making the Sheeraz fight because Turkey's the one paying for Sheeraz, and you know he's not afraid to pay above market value. Whereas Pacheco versus Munguia, that seems like Matchroom. They're the ones putting that together, likely at a more modest price. How much money would it cost them to get Jaime in the ring with their boy?
That's a fight that would fill up the stadium in LA, Hearn said. That's the fight we really want. He's done all the apprenticeship you need. He's ticked all the boxes. Time to roll the dice in a big fight with Diego Pacheco. He deserves it. He got off the deck Saturday, came back strong, and beat a very good fighter. Matchroom Boxing's chairman made it clear, however, that Pacheco possesses plenty of options if Munguia and or his promoters aren't interested in making that fight for some point early next year. Listen, you can't make someone fight, Hearn concluded. At the end of the day, if you want the challenge, if you want to get paid, if you want to roll the dice in a big fight on a big night, let's do it. But we're not limited to Jaime Munguia. Like I said, there's Hamza Sheeraz out there as well. There's Jermall Charlo. You know, there's loads of fighters at 168. I just feel that as a promoter, when you got Diego Pacheco from South Central LA, you've got Jaime Munguia, who's a tremendous Mexican fighter. We can bring a big fight to LA, and I believe it's time.
Now, anecdotally, it was recently stated by Eddie Reynoso, Canelo Alvarez's longtime trainer, that he would not be returning on his traditional May date and would instead come back later next year in September for a Crawford rematch. Now, what that essentially means is that you could do Pacheco versus Munguia on that day, and that would satisfy the Mexican boxing fans, hungry for boxing on that Mexican holiday. In theory, you could do it. The only caveat is they also want to do Benavidez versus Ramirez that weekend.
So do Pacheco versus Munguia on Friday, and let Benavidez and Zurdo have Saturday. Make a weekend of it.
Yeah, that could work. Jaime Munguia tested positive for traces of synthetic testosterone following his 12-round unanimous decision defeat of France's Bruno Surace in what was their rematch this past May at the A&B Arena in Riyadh. He was cleared of any wrongdoing, however, because UK anti-doping and the World Boxing Council determined his failed test was caused by a contaminated supplement.
Sriracha stunningly knocked out Munguia in the 6th round of their initial meeting a year ago in Tijuana. Munguia was a 35-1 favorite to win what was designed as a tune-up bout, but Sriracha got up from a second-round knockdown to drop and stop Munguia in the 6th of what was voted the ring's upset of the year last year. Former undisputed super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez is the only other opponent who beat the durable Munguia. Mexico's Alvarez unanimously outpointed Munguia in their 12-round fight in May of last year in Vegas.
Irrespective of who Diego ends up fighting, whether it's Jaime Munguia or Hamza Sheeraz, he's going to be facing fighters that have very strong corners. Hamza Sheeraz has Andy Ree. Jaime Munguia has Eddie Reynoso.
Where Diego is still breaking in this new guy. This guy in his corner is a guy who was already a member of his team, but was recently elevated to head trainer. All the same, how does he compare with Andy Lee? How does he compare with Eddie Reynoso? One would say that those other fighters have stronger, more experienced corners than Diego.
It's not too late for Diego to get rid of that guy and get somebody better.
So where the Hamza Sheeraz and Jaime Munguia fights would be different from the fight that Diego just had, is Kevin Lele Saggio is a very small guy. Small for a super middleweight, makes for a small target, whereas Hamza Sheeraz and Jaime Munguia, they make for a big target. Bigger than Kevin Lele Saggio.
Theoretically, that could make them easier to hit, could make it easier for Diego to get in with punches, because a Kevin Lele Saggio is barreling forward, tucked in that mid-guard, catching shots on the arms and elbows, and closing the distance. For a taller, longer fighter, that's actually a bit more awkward, dealing with someone that much shorter than you are. Whereas dealing with somebody who's eye level to you, you're on an even keel.
It's kind of like what you saw between Hamza Sheeraz and Carlos Adames, and Hamza Sheeraz and Edgar Berlanga. Edgar is a bit taller, closer to Hamza's height. Hamza didn't struggle with him the way that he struggled with Carlos Adames. For a taller fighter, a shorter fighter makes for an awkward assignment. Whereas two tall fighters, two guys that are eye level to each other, that might actually be more manageable.
Jaime Munguia and Hamza Sheeraz are both taller than Kevin Lele Saggio. I think it also helps that Jaime got knocked out by a non-puncher in Bruno Sriracha. What did that guy have? 4, 5 knockouts at the time that he knocked out Jaime? So if you're Diego, you're looking at Jaime.
You're telling yourself, if Bruno Sriracha can knock that guy out, I can knock that guy out.
You're telling yourself.
Can't really decide which fight I think is more difficult for Diego, the Jaime Munguia fight or the Hamza Sheeraz fight. I just know that I don't have a preference. I would be okay with either fight. I would be okay with Hamza early next year or Jaime a little later on.
Which fight do you think is bigger?
Well, I don't really got a preference, but in terms of scale, I think the Munguia fight might be a little bit bigger, just because of that Mexican backing, that Mexican-American backing. They are going to be interested in seeing a fight like that if you put it together. So maybe the Munguia fight is a little bit bigger than the Sheeraz fight.
Maybe. The Sheeraz fight is a Saudi bag after all. We know Turkey's willing to pay above market value, so I guess it all depends on what you mean by bigger. Do you mean bigger in terms of audience or in terms of payout?
In terms of payout, the Sheeraz fight might actually be bigger, though that's for Diego and Eddie Hearn to decide. Ultimately, I don't have a preference. I'm okay with either fight. I'm okay with Munguia. I'm okay with Sheeraz. Hopefully Diego gets one of them.
It is very unfortunate. I feel so bad, so sad that it has come to this. Terence is a tremendous fighter, without a doubt, one of the best of this era, one of the best fighters I have ever seen. Undisputed champion in 3 weight categories. He has been a champion for 12 years. And it is very unfortunate. Everything is being shaped into the money aspect. I do not wish to talk anything about Bud Crawford. He's a champion. I respect them. The only reason for existence of the WBC are the fighters. However, he did not comply with the rules in the Madrimov fight and then in the Canelo fight. We did everything possible to resolve this matter amicably. If you look at the numbers of the purse that he made and the percentage that the WBC imposed as a sanction fee is ridiculous. If other fighters want to express, I respect everyone has their own opinion. I feel absolutely comfortable with what the WBC is and what the WBC does. Every single penny that comes into the WBC goes back to boxing. We have employees all around the world. We have operations. Every fighter who steps into the ring has a life insurance provided by the WBC, medical insurance provided by the WBC. We have the Jose Sulaiman Boxers Fund, the WBC Cares Foundation. We bring boxers as a unity around the world, regardless if you're amateur, if you are a current professional fighter, if you're a champion or a superstar, but most importantly, when you retire.
So let's explore what Mauricio Sulaiman just said about Terence Crawford, because apparently he skipped out on paying sanctioning fees at 154 for what was the Madrimov fight, and he just skipped out on paying sanctioning fees for what was the Canelo fight. Now, I can think of one reason why he would have skipped out on paying sanctioning fees at 154. Remember, the Madrimov fight was for the WBA title, not any version of a WBC title. Israel Madrimov was WBA champion, so why would the World Boxing Council have then expected Terence to pay them sanctioning fees?
Likely as a segue to a Fundora fight.
It would have had to have been, because there was already an interim champion in Sergey Boachuk. Remember at that time, Sergey Boachuk was the interim champion. He lost the interim title to Virgil Ortiz a week after Terence fought Madrimov. So if Terence didn't kick out any money to the World Boxing Council at 154 as a segue to Sebastian, it's because he didn't need to. He was already Sebastian's mandatory via the WBO. So what are you going to pay the WBC for?
He was Sebastian's mandatory via the WBO?
He was, as a result of his WBO Super Champion status that allows him to move up to a weight and challenge that division's champion as a mandatory. So he didn't need any services from the WBC, not at 154, now at 168.
Well, it's a little bit different because according to Terence, he kicked out money to all the alphabets except the World Boxing Council because they wanted more money than the others.
I mean, that's literally what he said. The way I see it, Terence after the Canelo fight said he was going to move down to middleweight. He bounced around that idea. And if he ends up doing that, well, he would have ended up dropping the belts anyway. So why would you kick out money for them? Why would you kick out money to keep them if you're just going to end up dropping them anyway?
It doesn't make sense.
All the attention that this story got was because Mauricio took it to the media, seemingly pouting that he wasn't able to siphon any money from Terence Crawford. That's how it reads.
Sort of took it personal that he wasn't able to get any money out of that guy. You know they'd prefer that Canelo still have their belt.
You know that they have their preferences, and you know that underneath it all, they're not at all happy that Terence Crawford beat their guy and interrupted their revenue stream because they were getting a lot of money from Canelo. Now they're not getting nothing. They're getting nothing from Canelo and nothing from Terence.
That's why Mauricio Sulaiman has been pouting.